Guys, what is up? Movies for Brains coming back at you once again to do this time shelf 3 of my movie collection. And yeah, I hope you guys are doing okay. So, this will be shelf 3 of my collection. It's going to be mainly to the better part of the B's. All right, so go ahead and get this started. Okay, first of all, Bamboozled. So, this is a Spike Lee film. Um, this movie is really great. I liked it a lot. Damon Wayans, Savion Glover, Jada Pinkett Smith, Michael Rappaport. I think this movie was made right around the time she married Will Smith. Um, this is a really weird movie. I really like Spike Lee for the most part. I just love the fact that he is not afraid to show off how much of a movie geek he is, and he just kind of doesn't care whether you're with him or not. Um, it's really good. It's a very divisive movie. This movie is I'm not even sure that this movie can even be found anymore. I think this may be a collector's item because I'm really not even sure this movie's in print anymore. It's a I don't want to tell you too much about it, but it's about it's a very cynical movie about a couple of guys who get chosen to be on a TV show, and it is extremely offensive, and it becomes like really popular. It is a dark satire at the core, essentially. But yeah, uh, Bamboozled. Check it out. Next, we have Bananas by Woody Allen. Um, this is a really early Woody Allen movie. It's from '71. Um, Not one of his best movies. It's pretty funny. It has a lot of like real questionable, kind of cringeworthy jokes in it. I mean, I guess nowadays all of his movies do, but this one in particular is if you go back and watch it now, it's amazing. This is definitely falls under the category, and Woody Allen has so many of these. You could really not make a movie like this today. Anyway, Bananas. Yeah, uh, it's really funny, ridiculously broad comedy, like airplane style funny. Um, I know that doesn't really make sense to reference Airplane for a movie that was made like 8 years before Airplane came out, but um, yeah, it's ridiculous, bananas. Next up is Baraka. Okay, so this movie is it's extremely difficult to explain. It's it's like part nature documentary and part I don't even know what. Um, it's like I don't know, nature type. Just kind of put it on and chill. It's sort of like a form of meditation almost. Um, but yeah, it's really strange. There's no speaking in it. There's no actors in it. Most of it is just landscape. Um, but a lot of cool music, I believe, by Philip Glass. Um, I may be wrong about that. Um, but yeah, Baraka is pretty awesome. I really enjoy this movie. I suggest checking it out if you're into that type of thing. Next up, Bartleby. I love, love, love this movie. Now, I am the first person to admit this movie is not for everybody. Has Crispin Glover in it, David Paymer. David Paymer would be this guy right here. And Joe Piscopo, God help me, is in it. So this is an interesting movie. It's a movie that is it's based on a short story by Herman Melville called Bartleby the Scrivener, and it's actually not the first time. the film has been made. I think there's one from like the 70s, like a British, like a BBC production of it, which I've actually never seen. Actually, I saw this movie years ago in the theater, and I loved it. It came out on DVD. I had to get it. This is also a really rare movie. I don't think I've met anybody else who owns this movie. So it's a really weird movie about Crispin Glover is an office worker who just refuses to do anything. He goes to work, but he doesn't actually do any work. And it becomes like this very sort of zen thinking about like um, what I don't know what it means to be a person in the workforce or even a person in the world. Period. Um, it's really good. I suggest also checking this movie out. Okay, next is Basic Instinct. This movie is ridiculous. Of course, Paul Verhoeven. Everybody knows Basic. People of a certain age know this movie. I feel like I really don't have to explain it. Sharon Stone, Michael Douglas, one of the series of movies where women ruin Michael Douglas's life. Um, he plays a detective who is he's investigating a series of murders that are being carried out. If I remember correctly, she's like a novelist, and I don't know if she's like a nymphomaniac or something. Um, it's always been really confusing to me in the sense I'm not really sure what that part of it really has to do with the story. Um, I don't know. Quick tidbit: this movie has Newman in it from Seinfeld in a very brief scene. I think the most famous scene in the whole movie. If you know what I'm talking about, and I think you do, as Joe Bob Briggs would say, check it out. He's in that scene. Anyway, uh, yeah. Uh, Next movie is Barton Fink, Coen Brothers. I love this movie. Uh, I love I love most of the Coen Brothers movies up to a certain point. After about like the mid 2000s, they started getting just sort of not that great. But Barton Fink is really good. This is a really weird movie. It's John Turturro, John Goodman. It's about a guy with writer's block. Apparently, the Coen brothers had writer's block when they made it, so they just decided to make a film about a guy with writer's block, which I love that idea. Um, this is a very funny movie. It's a very dark movie. Um, Very Coen brothers. I'll leave it at that. All right, next is Batman Begins, the first Christopher Nolan Batman movie. I'll be honest with you, I'm really not a big fan of this movie. I have it for completion's sake. I very rarely ever watch it. I think it's the weakest of the Nolan Batman trilogy. Uh, I really wasn't into the villain. I know a lot of people like the Scarecrow. Scarecrow was really cool in the comics. I'm just not really sure how well that character translates to film. Um, I think that Nolan, his main issue with these movies is that I think he is a little too over ambitious. I think reach, he tries to make the films deeper than they are. Which is, I mean, it's Batman. He's a comic book character. It's not supposed to be, long journeys day into night or whatever. Um, but he kind of tries to make it that. And sometimes he succeeds and sometimes he doesn't. I'll also say, I think a lot of times I wonder how much the studio kind of neuters his vision. The only reason I think it's hard to do that when your movie is PG-13. That's all I'm saying. But I understand they're trying to open up to a bigger market. They want teenagers to be able to go see it, I guess. Um, but yeah, Batman Begins. Once again, I think probably everyone knows this movie. Um, oh, okay, so next is Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. So this is an animated movie. I really like this. It's really long. They pretty much recreate the actual graphic novel, The Dark Knight Returns, almost page by page. So it's over 2 hours long. Um, but it's really good, really well animated, really nostalgic for people like me who read the comic over and over and over again. Yeah, and the Joker is scary as hell in this. Um, quick tidbit: Peter Weller, who you would know probably from RoboCop, is actually the voice of Batman in the movie. Uh, so yeah, I highly suggest this. All right, next movie, Big Lebowski. We're hitting the Coen Brothers hard here. Yeah, Big Lebowski is great. Big Lebowski is probably one of my favorite Coen Brothers movies, aside from the one I just showed you and Fargo. Um, those are like the three best for me. Big Lebowski. This movie is. Some people say that this movie is overrated, and I definitely see where they're coming from with that. I kind of feel like this movie has, I guess, in some ways, overstayed its welcome. It seemed like in the late '90s and the early 2000s, every frat boy for 1,000 miles could quote this entire movie. But it is pretty legendary. Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, uh, Julianne Moore, John Turturro once again, Steve Buscemi. It's great. All right, next is Be Kind, Rewind. This is a Michel Gondry movie. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of Michel Gondry for the most part. I did really like this movie. This is a weird, quirky comedy with Jack Black and Mos Def. So the plot of this movie is really strange. They are two guys. They work in a video store, and I kind of forget how it happens, but something happens where um, the all of the movies in the video store get erased, and so because of that, they end up having to recreate them with like cardboard and uh, paper hats and stuff. So they like refilm the movies basically, and then put them back like their version of the movie back on the shelf. This is a real film lovers movie, and it's very strange. It's just like that idea alone is just like really weird. Um, yeah. So Michel Gondry, Be Kind Rewind. Next movie is Cool Hand Luke. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. With Paul Newman. This is a film about a guy in chain gang. He's kind of a legendary prisoner, won't do anything the guards tell him, and they just keep punishing him, and he doesn't care. This movie goes way beyond that. This is, in my opinion, probably one of the most important movies about um, individuality and uh, rising up against um, people in power and so forth ever made. Part of the reason for that is the time it was made. This movie is from 1967. Um, I did not know until very recently, actually, just a quick tidbit for this movie, that the character of Cool Hand Luke was actually based on a real person. There was really this sort of like legendary um, prisoner who kind of did this stuff. I also found out that the guy who wrote the book that the film was based on, actually hated the movie. He thought that Paul Newman was a pretty boy and was wrongly cast, basically. But yeah, I think this is a great movie. It's one of the best movies I think ever made. Um, you should definitely check it out. Next is Beetlejuice. I don't need to say anything about Beetlejuice, do I? Beetlejuice is great. We know this. Michael Keaton, Gina Davis, um, the other guy. Oh Lord, Alec Baldwin. There we go. Directed by Tim Burton. Um, if you haven't seen Beetlejuice and you're watching this, I don't know what you're doing with your life. I should really upgrade this. I have this old snap case. Um, I don't know. This is I'm sure there's like some super duper whooper um, Blu-ray edition of this, but I'll have to get that. Ah, next is The Believer. I really love this movie. So this is a movie with starring Ryan Gosling, and I'll be honest, this is really the first movie I ever saw that I ever remembered him being in. For a while, like every other movie I saw him in after that, before I could even really remember his name, I was like, oh, that's the guy from The Believer. Um, yeah, so this is a movie. It's a great movie about identity, identity crisis, wanting to find out or identify with who you are. So this is a movie about a guy who is. This is a movie about a guy who is. He's a Nazi. He's like a skinhead, but he's also a Jew. Um, so it's a lot about duality and how people get confused, not being one thing. Uh, yeah, this is I really enjoyed this movie. Don't really the guy who directed Henry Bean. I'll be honest, I don't really know who that is, but there's Billy Zane in it too, and he's really creepy. Um, yeah, I also saw this movie in the theater like years ago. All right, this movie is a concert film, Ben Folds Five, live in concert. I could probably just skip over this. I really like Ben Folds Five. Um, this is recorded in 1997. So this is recorded at a show called Live Sessions at West 54th. But There's a lot of bonus features on it. It's got like a whole other set on it at the end. But Yeah, Ben Folds. I haven't watched this in a very long time. I actually wasn't even really sure I even still had that. All right, next is the best of Midnight Rider. This is a very strange pickup. I found this years ago at this. It was actually a music store that also sold DVDs. Um, it's really weird. So it's a thing from the creator of Night Flight and Mondo, New York, which is like a it's like an access. It's like a cable access, which doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, cable access in general. But this is a like a cable access show that had like really weird, raunchy, sometimes terrible comedy on it. And this is sort of like a best of that. It's extremely bizarre. It has Otto and George, which is so. This is like an extremely dirty ventriloquist act. Like this guy, his jokes are just filthy. Has Jackie Marlin, if you know who that is, Andy Kaufman, and fucking Bill Hicks. Um, this is extremely rare. I would say check it out, but I really think you would probably have a hard time finding this. But Yeah, Midnight Rider. Okay, so these next three I'm gonna do together. They're the Bourne Identity, the Bourne. Whoops, let's try it again. The Bourne Identity, the Bourne Supremacy, the Bourne Ultimatum. I know that there are more of these at this point, but we don't have any of the other ones. I wouldn't even deal with the ones without Matt Damon in them. That's a waste of your and my time. Um, I'm not a huge action movie fan. My wife is. She loves these movies. I admit it took me a while to get into them. They're not perfect movies. I do really like the action sequences in them. Yeah, you can see that. There you go. But I hate the love interest part of it. It's so boring and it seems so forced. Like I'm not really sure why they even need that part in there. But Yeah, they're pretty good. I don't know. You should check them out. Once again, these are older movies. I'm sure everyone has seen these. Next movie is Big Daddy. Okay, so this is another Adam Sandler movie. This is from what year we got going here? 1999. Okay, the year I graduated high school. Yeah, Big Daddy is a movie about a guy who, through a weird series of circumstances, basically becomes an adoptive father to this little boy, and he's like Adam Sandler. I don't know. Um, a quick kind of side note for this movie is Jon Stewart is in this, and it very I believe he actually plays the real father um, to the boy very briefly. Um, this is a Dennis Dugan movie. Dennis Dugan is a director who directed most of Adam Sandler's movies, um, but yeah, it's okay. It's an extremely a movie of its time. It's going to be like a cringe movie a couple of years from now. It probably already is, honestly. Um, but yeah, Big Daddy. Next is Beyond the Black Rainbow. This movie is bizarre, and it is really awesome. So this is a sci-fi movie. Let me just say right off the bat, I love this movie. The visuals in this movie are amazing. It's like a telekinesis type movie. It's in a way real similar to the movie that I reviewed earlier on the channel. But the I'll say it again, the visuals in this movie are insane. This movie has a very small amount of dialogue. It's you could almost watch the movie with it on mute, but just without the sound on. Honestly, but it's set in 1983, and it's about this woman who is being held in a like in a like a research facility, and she's like a psychic. She has telekinesis, and she's like really strong, and she escapes basically. But there's I don't know. Everything in the movie takes forever to happen. I will say that. I basically described it as it's like a sci-fi. Like if Alejandro Jodorowsky and Stanley Kubrick got together and made a sci-fi movie, it would be this movie. Um, a lot of people hated on it for some reason online from the reviews I saw. I absolutely loved it, so I'm going to suggest that one. All right, next we have Before Sunrise. This is a Richard Linklater movie. I love this movie too. So this is a movie. Literally nothing happens. Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy are the literally the only two people in it, really, and it's just all dialogue. I really enjoy stuff like this. It's just two people talking. Of course, they fall in love. Uh, I guess over the course of it, it's mainly just two people talking about philosophy, which, like, real early in his career, it seemed like that's all Richard Linklater really wanted to do was just make movies about people talking. I love that kind of stuff. Um, and he has actually, at this point, I think, made three more of these in addition to this one. So this is the first one. This is the only one that I have, although I have seen Before Sunset, which I believe was the second one. And he made them like 10 or 15 years apart from each other or something like that. But yeah, that's great. Okay, next movie, Better Off Dead. So this is a Savage Steve Holland movie, one of John Cusack's first movie, not his first, but one of his first starring roles, probably. This movie is awesome. So this is a coming of age teen rom com. This movie is ridiculous. Savage Steve Holland is a director who specializes in really obtuse comedy. Uh, he hasn't made too many movies. He made this. He made another movie with John Cusack in it called One Crazy Summer with Bobcat Goldthwait. And he also made a movie called How I Got Into College. To my knowledge, those are the only three movies he made. And then he directed like a bunch of TV. Um, but this movie is absolutely great. It's really funny and it's very strange. I'm saying that a lot about a lot of these movies, but yeah, I would definitely suggest that one. Next is Bullets Over Broadway. Once again, Woody Allen. This is I really like this movie. John Cusack's in this too. Um, but so this is one of his better 1990s comedies. Comedy about a writer who ends up writing a script for the mob. Jennifer Tilly is in it, and she's hysterical. This movie just has great old fashioned, like Singing in the Rain style comedy in it. Really good, really good. And yeah, that's all I'll say about that one. Next is Black Sheep. Man, so this movie is one of the films, of course, with Chris Farley, David Spade. I love these movies, but they're so hard to watch now, man, because I miss Chris Farley so much. Chris Farley was a guy who could take like this movie should be shit, and it kind of is in a way, but them together sell it. Like if they weren't in it, the movie would be unwatchable, basically. This movie is directed by Penelope Spheris, who also directed Wayne's World, and she directed the punk documentary Decline of Western Civilization. I'll get to that later. But yeah, I really love this movie. I haven't seen it in a really long time, but yeah, man, it's great. Got Gary Busey in it too, at one point. Okay, next, speaking of Saturday Night Live, the Blues Brothers. How can you not love the Blues Brothers? John Landis, 1980. Uh, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd. This movie's great. The only real downfall of this movie is the length of it. It's like 2 hours and 13 minutes long, which is I can't imagine why this movie would need to be that long. And actually, the funny thing is that this DVD it has an extended version on it, which is it goes like 228, so it's like 15 minutes longer. But yeah, this is great. It's a real gem. Great music in this movie. Great comedy. If you have 2.5 hours to spend, check it out. It's kind of crazy. This is a John Landis comedy movie that is like the length of a Tarantino film, basically. But it's great. Next movie, Bulworth. Also, I think this is a great movie. There's a lot of really good movies on this shelf, guys. I really like this movie, written and directed by Warren Beatty. Um, Very political, very divisive film. It's about a senator who is he gets very, I don't know, depressed about the way that um, that you know political things work, and he tries to commit suicide by like hiring someone to kill him, basically, and then he's kind of just starts to lose his mind, and he starts to rap everything that he says, and a lot of, I mean, you basically know where Warren Beatty stands on political leanings in this movie. I'm all for it. I think this movie is great. It's even if you're not into Warren Beatty, it's worth a one-time watch. And I hate to say this at this point, I'm not even sure young people even know who Warren Beatty is anymore. But he's an old Hollywood guy. But anyway, yeah, check it out. Oh man, okay. Next is Bill Cosby himself. I'm not going to get into the whole Cosby thing here because that's not what I'm about. We all know. We know. That's all I'll say. Anyway, so Bill Cosby himself, despite what you think about him, this is like a pretty iconic stand-up special that he did back in like the late 70s. So this is, no, I'm sorry, it's later than that, 82. Um, so this is the special essentially that they based the Cosby Show off of. Like all of the type of humor and all the characters essentially are they got from this special, and they specifically got from really like the last 30 minutes of it, basically. But yeah, I still think this is funny. It's really difficult to watch now because of everything we know about him. In the next movie, I'll go ahead and do so. This I also have this one, Bill Cosby, Far From Finished. So this, of course, was much later. This was one that he did in like 2013. This is also still really funny, but very strange. Like if you know, going back and watching, especially this one now, um, there's so much like weird stuff that he does um, in the concert. Uh, it kind of seems like he was going senile a little bit. But anyway, uh, yeah, these two, if you can stomach it, check them out. I still think both of them are pretty good. Uh, Next movie is Birdman, Michael Keaton. This movie's great. This movie is great. It's one of those films that is so it's made to look like it seems like they shot it all in one take. I'm not sure if they actually did or not. Won Academy Award the year that it came out. It's a really cool case. That was that. So this is a film that is it's extremely meta. So this is it's got Michael Keaton in it. Michael Keaton, of course, was Batman in the 1989 Batman. So the film is about an actor who is a stage actor now, who's kind of washed up, but he's known for playing a character called Birdman, and he's sort of um, he's kind of like a has been. In a way, it's got Zach Galifianakis. Also has Edward Norton in it, and I'll be honest, this is probably the last big thing I really remember Edward Norton being in. I don't know, he just kind of disappeared. But this movie was a big deal in 2014. Um, Won all kind of awards. I really liked it, and Birdman is really great. Uh, Once again, not for everybody. It's pretty weird, but I would say definitely check that out as well. Next is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. One day I am going to do an actual review of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey because that movie, Bogus Journey, not Excellent Adventure, the sequel, that movie is insane. Now, I'm not saying that it's a good movie necessarily, but there's just so much about it that I'm just like, what was happening when you guys were making that movie? Um, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, these are classics in my opinion. Um, I actually prefer Bogus Journey, mainly because I haven't seen it as many times, but also just because the movie is insane. It's it's like a crazy person wrote it. I don't know, maybe they did, but I heard. I don't know how true this is, but I heard they're going to be making a new one, which I'll be very interested to see. Um, but yeah, man, Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter, George Carlin. George Carlin did not return. Oh no, he did. He did return. I'm sorry. He was in both of them. Okay. Um, but yeah, I definitely say check that one out. Check all these out. Black Dahlia. Brian De Palma. So this is like a film noir about the Black Dahlia. Spoiler alert. Um, this movie's not great. It's well, it's a Brian De Palma film, so I feel like De Palma he's like the poor man's Hitchcock, right? He really knows what he wants to do, but bless his heart, he's I don't think he's ever really gotten there. Um, this movie is pretty great, pretty solid direction, pretty good cinematography. I feel like lacks from it suffers from at a certain point in the movie, the acting just gets ridiculous. And I don't know if everybody was just caught up in the noir part of it or what. But I don't know. It's okay. See it once. I think it kind of goes off the rails in the third act. Speaking of going off the rails, okay, so the next movie is Black Snake Moan. This movie is also very bizarre. This is a movie with Samuel L. Jackson, Christina Ricci. It's directed by a guy named Craig Brewer, who a couple of years before this movie, he made another movie called Hustle and Flow, which I thought was really good. Not everybody loved it. So Hustle and Flow is like the hip hop movie that he did, like the Southern hip hop movie. This movie's like the Southern blues movie. That's the best way I can describe it. This movie is much stranger than Hustle and Flow. Samuel L. Jackson is a blues musician who essentially kidnaps and it takes hostage Christina Ricci. He handcuffs her to a radiator, basically, and to in the attempt to save her soul. It's a very strange movie. This is a movie that's really hit or miss. There are parts of it that I really loved and parts of it that I absolutely hated. I wasn't exactly sure what Brewer was trying to do with this movie, but it's never boring. I'll say that. And I just dropped the movie. That was awesome. Speaking of never boring. Okay. Blazing Saddles. Mel Brooks. 1970 something. Yeah, anyway. Everybody knows Blazing Saddles. This is. I should probably just sell this. I actually have a Blu-ray copy of it now. Um, this movie is great. I mean, it's like, in my opinion, the greatest, uh, comment on racism, especially ingrained in the old westerns, movie-wise, probably ever done. Um, Mel Brooks does a great job of riding that fine line between like, should I really be laughing at this? But then like, anytime you think that, he does this thing where you're like, oh yeah, you're making fun of it. You're not condoning it because he makes all of the well, first of all, racial prejudice is the glue that holds the entire movie together. But second of all, he does all this stuff where like, um, anytime you start to kind of feel bad for laughing, he reminds you he like all of the racist people in the movie are so dumb that you can't take anything they say seriously. Um, but Blazing Saddles, younger folks, if you haven't seen this, definitely check it out. Be careful who you watch it around. That's all I'll say. Um, all right, so the next movie is The Butterfly Effect, and I have the combo, The Butterfly Effect too. I really like The Butterfly Effect. Butterfly Effect. I'll admit I actually have not watched the second one. Um, Ashton Kutcher, probably one of the better movies Ashton Kutcher has been in. Um, Kind of a strange vehicle for him to do. I thought it's a horror suspense sci-fi movie essentially. Um, yeah, I would say check it out. It's not like the greatest movie ever made. Uh, a really cool idea. I'm not sure about the execution. Next movie is Steve McQueen as Bullet. I'll be fully upfront here and say I have this movie. I've actually never watched it, so I'm not even really sure what this movie is about. I guess he's a police. I think he's a detective. Um, I'm not sure, but I think that the character of Bullet is actually based on a one of the detectives who worked the the Zodiac case. I'm not too sure about that, but I think that's right. Ah, next is Bloodsucking Freaks. I love this movie. This is the Troma release. It's really awesome. Uh, Bloodsucking Freaks is great. You got, I don't know, midgets with whips. You got vampires. You got a doctor sucking the brains out of a guy with a straw. This is all in like the first 15 minutes of the movie that I'm talking about. This movie is insane. I definitely suggest checking it out. Uh, I think it's a oh, it's Joel Reed, directed by Joel Reed. Yeah. This movie is one of the, like, I'm pretty sure it was banned in a lot of places. And I know it was on the Video Nasties list probably, in England. But yeah, you should definitely check this movie out. It's great. Um, I really like it. All right, guys, and last but not least, bringing up the rear here, Blue Velvet, David Lynch. I absolutely love, love, love David Lynch. Once again, I'm going to say his movies are not for everyone. Some people would say not for anyone, especially this one. This movie is very difficult to stomach if you are really not, if you don't know what you're in for. But yeah, Blue Velvet, man, I would definitely say check it out. Um, it's Kyle MacLachlan, Dennis Hopper. Um, this movie's great. Uh, it's a Lynch movie, so it's kind of difficult to explain. I feel like most of the plot is in the details. Kyle MacLachlan plays a high school kid. Yeah, that's how long ago this was made. Who comes? No, I'm sorry, a college kid who comes home from college to visit his parents, finds a severed ear in a field. This is like the first 5 minutes of the movie, and kind of gets involved in this weird plot. Dennis Hopper is out of his mind. I mean, more out of his mind than he normally is in this movie. It's I don't know, and a lot of crazy stuff happens. But this movie is absolutely great. I really love it. And yeah. Okay, guys, that is gonna do it for Shelf Three. Okay, so comment, like, and subscribe. Please let me know if you've seen any of these movies or if you own them. Okay, guys, thank you so much and for watching.